Whelan.
And I too am grateful for the opportunity this evening to address this motion, very important issue tabled by Senator Mary-Louise O'Donnell, who deserves all credit and our thanks for the opportunity to have a discourse and a constructive discussion around this important topic. I'm also absolutely relieved that the Government and the Minister have, the influence of the Minister here this evening, have had the good grace to withdraw the counter-motion. I don't know how we would have faced into a situation of dividing over waking the dead and comforting the bereaved. I'm not surprised it has been withdrawn, though, because Minister Kathleen Lynch, I'm glad it's her who's taken the motion. I know no more compassionate or kind person in politics or in the ministry, and I'm glad that that has happened. I am surprised, I suppose, that it's taken 3 years, though, for this topic to get to the floor of the House in some ways here, because politicians of all persuasions have had a strange relationship with funerals and bereavements down the years, and in fact some are noted for never missing a funeral. In fact, I have been chided and chastised repeatedly by colleagues for not going to funerals, and I refuse, however, to go to someone's funeral that I don't know, and I'll stick with that, because it's hard enough to go to those ones without turning up at funerals of people that I've never met or I never knew. It is nevertheless a very sensitive and complex issue. As a younger person, I was always a bit confused and bewildered as to why people showed up in such large numbers to shake hands with families. And in fact, I used to think that, as I said, as a younger person, that I couldn't figure it out, the need for it. And of course, as we grow a bit older and experience and encounter bereavement, we know just how important that is and how comforting it is for the bereaved families. And it is not something that should be taken lightly at all, because it is, of course, a well-worn and age-old ritual that should be respected and is very important. If it seems at a distance a simple process, but I do know how important it is for families, and it is something that helps tide them over that difficult time and get them through the hardship and the loss. To hear other people commenting on their loved one and the relationship that they had with the person, which we sometimes overlook. I also think that it is something that it is important that we're addressing in a changing society, because as someone who comes from a family of 7, I'm conscious of the support one has in an extended or a larger family at times of stress and at times of bereavement and at times of difficulty. But more and more these days, families are smaller units, sometimes maybe just 1 or 2 children in a family. Also, people are starting families much later in life, and very often parents and indeed children don't have the support of grandparents and the extended family around them, and the experience and the wise heads and the wise counsel that often comes from having an extended family in close proximity to you, and having grandparents around who have wise heads on them and can support us in a time of loss. And this can be something that can be very difficult for younger children who perhaps grow up never to have known or met their grandparents. Indeed, also we have the issue these days of emigration. And one of the facilities that Portage Parish makes available at funerals, and again, in one sense it seems a little bit strange, but it's a fantastic facility and service where the funerals available on video link around the world for extended family members who can't make it home. And I know people who have, sat down and watched funerals of relatives in Australia from Portage Parish Church. And, who would have thought that we'd have to, I suppose, resort to that? But fortunately, we have the technology, and we are also living in an age of mass emigration. And again, for people who are at a distance, it can be very difficult for them to cope with a loss at such a distance. But certainly being able to tune in and see their family and friends firsthand is I know, of some comfort and some help to them. I also think that, I've mentioned this before here, that we often see young people these days struggling to cope with all kinds of new stresses and burdens that are imposed upon them. And I think again that if we are going to talk about education and reviewing the junior cert curriculum, I think coping skills of all kinds should be embedded as part of the discourse around the curriculum. I have to say that by the time we come to give people perhaps bereavement counselling, it's sort of perhaps too late in the day, because at that stage they're confronted and in the throes of the trauma. Whereas, as this motion very holistically suggests that these are the issues that we should start to prepare for well in advance, and what would be wrong with young people having a discourse in the context of education around the whole idea of coping skills and bereavement. And other colleagues have made the points, I'm not going to reiterate it, about the idea of preparing and making a will. I know that great effort is made once a year, to make a will day. And it's something that, again, that as younger people would say to you, what would I be needing to make a will for? But again, I do know that it does take from a lot of pressure on people and on families and on those who are left behind, not to have to cope with those kind of additional burdens. And finally, Minister, I've been asked to wrap up, but I would like to make one final point, and that is that it has been brought to my attention on a number of occasions now over the last number of months across the Midlands, it's not a parochial issue, where post-mortems are not being carried out in our hospitals in the case of sudden deaths at weekends. I have encountered a number of examples where young people have been tragically and unfortunately killed in road accidents on a Thursday night or a Friday morning, or situations where people have lost their lives through self-harm and suicide on a Friday, where the post-mortems are not being conducted on Fridays, Saturdays or Sundays, and families are left without closure while they need time and space to mourn and to grieve. I think the trauma and the hurt and anxiety is unnecessarily prolonged through what I think is a harsh cutback in a service, and a thoughtless one. I would have thought that maybe an on-call service could be made available across a number of hospitals, so as people do not have to wait until a Monday to have a post-mortem carried out and the funeral further deferred until a Wednesday. It's happening quite a lot. I've encountered it myself on a few occasions, Minister. I think that, death does not keep office hours or 9 to 5 Monday hours. And I think, therefore, we should have post-mortem facilities available in our hospitals at weekends, particularly in cases of such traumatic and shocking sudden deaths. I think it's unfair to put an additional burden on the bereaved. Thank you very much, Minister.